Hi, I'm Dennis, and in this video, I'm going to cover why you shouldn't wait to become a data scientist. Welcome back. Now that I'm putting out more content, I get to hear from people from all around the world. And that's great. I love that. I love hearing from other data scientists, and I love hearing from people from different countries and different cultures. In that process, I've noticed a couple of recurring themes. And one of those recurring themes is about how do I become a data scientist? Or sometimes people will tell me, I just graduated school. How do I get my first job as a data scientist? Or in other cases, it's also people who have been looking for a data scientist job, but haven't found much success in landing interviews or landing the role that they want. In many ways, this gives me the impression that people are essentially waiting to be appointed as a data scientist. People are waiting to be given the title of data scientist. Well, I have some bad news and I have some good news for you. The bad news is that no one is really going to come along and tap you with a magic wand and say, you are now a data scientist. That simply doesn't exist. It's not listening to me. It's not more YouTube tutorials. You're not going to find that in a certification. The good news, however, is that if you want to be a data scientist, you can do the work on your own. You can appoint yourself a data scientist. So that's what I want to cover with you today about the work needed for you to establish your own credentials as a data scientist, because I think that's possible. It's what I did, and I want to help you do the same. If you're enjoying this content, please click on like and follow below. So let's take this step by step. What exactly do you need to become a data scientist? Well, I think one of the beauties of data science is that there's very low barriers to entry. First of all, the tools are very egalitarian, and what I mean by that is that the tools are very freely available. Python and all the relevant libraries that you would need are out there free for download. There's no cost to access them. There's no special version that only big companies use or a special version of a library that you have to show advanced credentials to access. Really, everybody on the planet can access every data science tool that's available. The skill is in being able to know what to do with all of those tools. Next, you might also need some data. Well, data is fairly freely available also. You can look at things like different research reports. There are some research reports that make their raw data available. A lot of cities and governments across the world have open data initiatives where they are required to publish out some of their data. That's another source for you. Or it's also possible to run your own surveys, collect your own data. Go out and ask people different questions, design your own survey, put a survey up on your social media. You can collect your own data. That's one of the things that you're going to have to get used to working as a data scientist, where not everything is just handed to you. You also have to do a little bit of the work on your own to go out there and find these tools and the data that you need. In addition to that, there's not a lot of processing power that's required to be a data scientist. Yes, you might hear about GPUs and these massive data centers, but not every model requires that. You can do a lot of processing on your own resources that you already have. You have to keep in mind that in being a data scientist, it's not about hitting the ball hard. It's about repeatedly hitting the ball. It's okay for you to take small steps towards being a data scientist. You don't have to hit a home run every single time you deploy a model. Finally, also be confident that you have the skills for this. Data science isn't about how strong a programmer you are or how good of a mathematician you are. It's about how you apply the scientific method. Data science is about the process, not necessarily formulas and tools. So the repetitions, the benefit is in continually finding problems and reapplying the scientific method to those problems. There's not a lot of barriers of entry there to stop you from doing that on any number of data sets, using any number of tools on your own time. You don't need to be employed by a company to do everything I just described. So here's what this looks like in practice. I'm going to share how I did it and how I actually carried this out. When I made the move into data science, I was already a software developer. And I had a good software developer resume, but I didn't have a data science resume. So I took it upon myself to do the work and do it all on my own. So the first part was I decided to find some data. There's two, I did this in a variety of different ways, but there's two particular examples that come to mind. In the first example, there was a financial research report that was put out by a government agency here in the US. I thought the report was interesting, so I read the full version, and I noticed in the back that they said, here's a link to the raw data. And I thought, great, let me go get that raw data. And I built my own model for questions that their report didn't answer. I took their report and I extended it so that I can get further answers from their same data. They essentially ran a survey for me. I was using survey data that had no cost to me. In another example, I also live in a city that has open data initiatives. Various agencies are required to publish out data, including the police department. So there was some police data that was available for download by any citizen that wanted the data. So that was another data set that I used for my own independent research. From there, the second part is committing yourself to doing the work and being disciplined enough to actually carry it out. Again, it's about the scientific method. So you're taking your data and now you can form a hypothesis. Once you form a hypothesis, you have to decide which experiments you need in order to either prove or disprove your hypothesis. Once those experiments are designed, you actually have to execute them in writing your own code. So I did that for all of these two data items that I'm highlighting with you. I remember that I made myself the commitment because I was really passionate about data science. So I made the commitment to work every Wednesday and Thursday afternoon. I would get out of the house, I would go to Starbucks, and I would sit there with a coffee all afternoon. I would usually start around 2 p.m. and I would stay there until they closed. And I would just sit there and do the work. No one was paying me. I didn't have a contract or anything else. I just wanted to practice my own skills as a data scientist, and I decided that there was no reason for me to do it other than my own decision to commit to it. From there, I started publishing some of my results. Looked at my experiments, looked at how it related to my hypothesis, and then I interpreted those results in articles that I would write for my own blog. It was a simple WordPress log, nothing fancy. I only had a couple of readers, but it got me into the practice of taking my results, interpreting them, and then sharing them with the world. Those are very valuable skills as a data scientist. From there, I was able to take that work, particularly the work around the police data, and I sent that to some conference organizers, and they selected me to speak at their conference. After that, I had the credentials on my resume to say I've published work, I've spoken at conferences, and I was able to use that to get a contract, an independent contract with a bioinformation agency here in my local city. There was a biostatistician that was working on some research, and she needed additional assistance from a data scientist, and we came to an agreement so that I could work for her. And that became my first data science job. It didn't pay much, and it was an independent contractor position, so it wasn't a very long position. But that's how I'm using that to illustrate how you build using small steps to put yourself into that position of getting a data science job. From there, after I had an appropriate data science resume, I had experience and a reference working as a data scientist. I was able to use that to get a larger corporate job as a full-fledged data scientist. None of that would have been possible unless I had made that initial commitment to myself and to the discipline required to carry out the work. Again, it wasn't complex work. It wasn't high-powered work. I was just doing the models on my laptop. But the point is that I got into the habits of practicing the scientific method and actually being a data scientist. And that's really the key takeaway here. If you're enjoying this content, please click on like and follow below. As a side note, I'd like to talk about another recurring theme I've noticed in my career. With my job and with my senior status, I've been assigned to mentor various less seasoned data scientists at different times in my career, both data scientists and data analytics folks. One of the common themes that has also popped up in those conversations is the notion of imposter syndrome. And I realize that's an increasingly common feeling that a lot of people are getting in the workplace. So one of the reasons why I advocate doing the work on your own and becoming a data scientist on your own is because I also think that it can help you if you have those feelings of imposter syndrome. If you're waiting for somebody to come along and just anoint you a data scientist, I think it becomes much more likely for you to feel imposter syndrome because now you're walking into your job on the first day without really having done the work on your own. But if you follow the process that I describe, where you are taking it upon yourself to exercise your skills and be a data scientist on your own, then I think it's a completely different experience when you're walking in to your first job and are expected to work on data science projects because you can say, hey, I've done this before. I've been here. I know what it's like to go out and get the data and design my own experiments and write my own code from scratch and publish my results. Now you are having a completely different experience than somebody else who really just didn't do the work on their own. I think the likelihood between those two scenarios of you getting imposter syndrome is very, very different. I think you're very unlikely to feel that imposter syndrome if you can walk into the job knowing you've done the work, knowing you've had the discipline, feeling like you've been a data scientist with the work that you've carried out. So not only can you really use these skills to leverage yourself into a career, I think you'll also feel better about it once you are in that position because you're going to have so much more experience behind you. I hope this video has been helpful to you. Again, I'm just sharing my experience and my reality of how I did it, and I hope that's helpful to you. The bottom line is don't wait. Don't wait for somebody to just appoint you a data scientist. If you want to be a data scientist, go out there and do it. There's nothing stopping you from doing it. If you're interested in data science and you've developed some skills, then that means you're a pretty smart person, so you can probably go ahead and carry out your own experiments. Go out there and do it and put yourself in a much better position to land your next data scientist job by actually doing the work. I'll see you next time.